All right, we're live. So, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I am Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor for Running Wild and RIZE Presses. And I am here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, along with my editors who I've already gotten a couple of notes. Some of my folks are going to be a little bit late today. I think it's kind of been a week for most people. It's been definitely interesting. Let's just kind of put it out there. So, we are here though to answer any questions that you may have. It can be around publishing, editing, manufacturing of books. It could be about, is my hair truly red? The answer is actually yes, it is. Um, whatever you may come up with, all you have to do is go ahead and pop your question into the comments section, and I will be more than happy to. I'll reply. I'll repeat your question, and then we will then go. We typically go around the table and provide answers. If you were watching this and it is not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time or 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, that's totally okay. No big shakes. All you have to do is go ahead and pop your questions into that comment section. And what'll happen is I go back and I check every day actually, and I see if we have any new questions that have come up so that we can then respond to them in the subsequent week. So, some really exciting and fun stuff has happened this week. As promised, my editors and I, my acquisition editors and I, and my leadership team, we all met this past week. We met literally last night, actually, and we went through all of the submissions for full length pieces. So that could be a memoir, it could be a story collection, it could be a novel, it could be creative nonfiction, and for both Running Wild and for Rise. So if you had sent us something and you were waiting to hear whether it's something that we're interested in acquiring or what have you, you will hear from us within, I'd say, by the end of this week, meaning like probably Saturday, Sunday. And really, really excited. We had a lot of fun. We always have a blast going through the submissions that we've received. Truly, truly honored to have an opportunity to check out your fantastic stories, all the great creativity, all the great ideas, all the amazing storytelling. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for giving us a chance. Now, what you may find, one thing that we are going to start doing is instead of simply declining a piece if we don't think it's quite ready, if it's something that we think, maybe with one or two rounds of revisions, it would be pretty solid. What we're going to start doing is we are going to decline it, but we're going to give you feedback so that if you so choose, if you agree with the feedback, you're like, hey, you know what? I see that. I can see that as being an opportunity area for me. Then what we are doing is we are recommending for you to make the revision and welcoming you to go ahead and resubmit it to us. We now are going to be doing the submission process, the review process, typically once every 4 months, something like that. So our next actual review of submissions is going to occur on in March of 2023. So I really hope I'm really looking forward. So that would be the end of the first quarter of 2023, obviously. So I really hope that if you do receive an email like that from us or feedback like that from us, that you keep an open mind and really kind of consider it. Because what that means is that our team said, you know what, I really like it. I just it would be great if they could do X, Y, or Z. And yeah, so looking forward to sending out those offers, both for acquisition as well as to take a shot at revision and then coming back to us. Now, if you are someone who is going to get an offer from us, just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. We actually have a full slate for 2023 for both Running Wild and Rise. In reality, with our manufacturer and our distributor, we actually have to have all of the titles into them by, I believe it's November 15th of this year in order for it to actually be published in 2023. And we also have a completely full slate for 2024 for Running Wild. And I believe a pretty close to full slate, if not a full slate, in 2024 for Rise. So if we make you an offer, and I'll be very clear when I send the notification out of acceptance, that most likely the work would be published actually in 2025. Now, I know that feels like an, oh my God, did she say 2025? Holy crap, that's far too long. We're only in 2022. In reality, it's not really that far because if you think about it, we are at the end of 2023. I'm sorry, the end of 2022 right now, right? It's the end of October. And typically, the editing process alone for most books take a couple of months. I'd say 3 to 6 months. And so that would put you solidly like smack dab in the middle of 2023 already anyway. And then if you tag on top of that, and I'm saying like if we were able to actually print the book immediately, and then so if you tag onto that the amount of time that's needed for our manufacturer and for our distributor in order to ensure that your piece gets a solid amount of backing in terms of the sales team and so on, then what you're looking for at is again, if let's say it was completely fully edited and submitted to both the manufacturer and the distributor by middle of 2023, so let's say May, that means it would not be available to the general public until the beginning to middle of 2024. So 2025 really isn't that far away. So again, just keep an open mind if we do get an offer from us. So that's the big news. Again, very excited. We got some really cool stuff in the last round. So again, if you are watching this and you are curious about something, please feel free to go ahead and pop your question into the comments section, and I will be more than happy to repeat your question, and then I'll respond to it. I did actually get a really interesting question, or at least it was interesting to me. We'll see if you find it interesting at all. That from a lovely woman regarding how does distribution work? How does production work? Now, her initial response, and I'm actually going to be talking to her one-on-one later on tonight. Her initial response to me was fascinating to me. The reason is that for those who've been around the publishing industry, I'd say for like the last 15, 20 years, it's evolved a lot. It's changed a lot. The different business models have changed significantly. I mean, once upon a time, your option was only, in reality, to go with a major distributor, to go with a major publisher, unless you were going to go down to, like Kinko's or something and see if they would pop something out for you. And then all of a sudden, Amazon showed up on the scene, and Amazon was making it available for you to do things like put out ebooks on Kindle. And that was a huge game changer, right? Because all of a sudden, people who couldn't have books out there suddenly have books out there. Well, now, hey, Peter,
Hello.
I'm going through the evolution, I guess you could say, of the publishing industry in the last like 15 years, something like that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I actually had a lovely woman who had reached out to me who's a friend of one of our authors. And she had asked me, like, so what's your business model? And I forget what I had said, but she said, oh, so that means that you are a print on demand. And I was like, no, it does not mean we are a print on demand.
Mhm.
And so I offered to basically sit down one on one with her and like kind of talk through it. So I thought, you know what? I can actually kind of walk people through it here in case they find it, kind of interesting, if that makes
I
sense.
think it'd be interesting. Keep going.
So, so I was kind of talking about how at first, really your only option, if you wrote a great story, was to go to a major publisher, right?
Right.
Um, and that, or, and what was considered a small publisher at one point was more like an industry press. I mean, I'm sorry, like a university press, like
Mhm.
a Harvard Business Review, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Missouri. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then out came Amazon, and all of a sudden, you could self-publish rather easily, but it was really all basically ebook, right?
Right.
And then what started happening was the bigger players started figuring out, oh, we can have new revenue streams if we offer new options.
Hmm.
So what happened was, like Ingram used to only have like Ingram West and Ingram East, and so they are basically a regional book distributor and manufacturer. And Penguin has a bajillion different arms, right? And I think, what is
Right.
it? Hatchet now has
That's
bought
his
a
book
whole.
group. Yep.
Yeah, Hatchet's bought a whole bunch. Well, all these guys that used to, they really just basically had whoever it is they purchased, or that they had branched off with. They then turned around and said, you know what? We could work with these small independent presses, and we could contract with them to offer our distribution services. And it accomplishes two things. One, it's a new revenue stream, right?
Hmm. Right.
And two, it's a way to headhunt. So
True.
if you, well, a headhunt, and well, I guess three, it's a way to identify who you want to acquire next.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Penguin's been doing that hardcore. From what I'm aware of, so has Hatchet. Hatchet's been doing it pretty significantly. What Ingram did is they took it a whole nother level, and Ingram created Ingram Spark. And Ingram Spark is really fully indie, right? So they are actually the true print on demand. And they are not actually offering, it's not the same distribution services that they have as a part of like Ingram West.
Is
It's
it the same?
actually,
Do they offer
sorry,
Do they offer editing for these prints? These imprints? That was my question before. Is they don't offer editing services,
nope,
right?
they don't offer editing services. What you're basically doing is you're submitting to them your cover art, you're submitting to them all your interior files, and then they make sure the book is available through like Amazon. This can be ebook. It used to only be paperback and ebook, and then it
Right.
became. I think they now do offer hardback.
Oh, okay.
Um, but you pick what form you want it to be available in.
What do you want to pay
Uh,
for?
right, exactly. So, well, what do you want to pay for? And yeah, and like what kind of work do you want to put into getting this done, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, but the problem or challenge with Ingram Spark is that it's only is that like re it's only available through like an Amazon, a Target, right? So anyone who's signed up to get part of their feed of all the books that are that they represent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it will not be available in libraries. Most independent sellers will do not sign up for this. The reason for that is because the large distributors, the minimum discount, that's basically, which is really from retail, so basically the wholesale discount,
Right.
is the minimum is 50% off the cover price. With Ingram Spark, they and I think it's the return is starting 9 months after the sale. I think that's right. I mean, as long as it's not defective, right? The book's not defective. So it's just the book hasn't sold and they don't want to invest the shelf space, on it anymore. They want to get other books to have that same shelf
Right.
space. They can return it. I think it's 9 months. Anyway, with Ingram Spark, what they do is they say, "Okay, independent publisher, uh you tell us what you want the discount to be, and you tell us if it's returnable."
Hmm.
And because of that, it most small bookstores, small retailers will not acquire from Ingram Spark because of the potential cost to them. They just don't make enough money
Right.
uh, per book to justify taking that kind of risk. And the assumption is that if the book is with an indie and that it didn't necessarily make it with a larger distributor, then it may not be good, right?
Does Ingram Spark do any marketing for the books? Any marketing or any advertising or anything other than saying, "Here's the book" to booksellers?
They basically have a feed that it's up to not the manufacturer, it's up to the independent press on what kind of information they're going to provide.
Okay.
Um, so like you may be able to find the book in like Target's feed or Amazon's feed or what have you, but it is 100% dependent on whatever it is that publisher has elected to include in the information.
Okay.
But to your point, in terms of, I don't believe that there isn't a sales force behind the titles, basically, right?
Right. Hmm.
Now, what the bigger publishers then turned around and said was, "Oh, well, you know what? As long as you small press, as long as you tell us what your business model is, you tell us like the number of books, give us usually it's they want to have some insight into what your sales numbers have been in the past, right? Like, have
Right.
you won awards, all that kind of thing. Um, if it looks like something that could be beneficial to that distributor, then what they'll then turn around and say, "Hey, you know what? Why don't we contract for us to represent your books, and our sales team will be behind all the books that you put out, right?" Um, Now, in the old model, the way it used to work was the larger houses they'd like, let's say they buy a thriller, right? And the thriller's comped to something by, some well-known thriller writer. Um, what they'll do is they'll look at the last, like, say, 3-year history of sales for that for those comps, and they'll do a calculation to figure out how many books should they actually have manufactured in preparation for this book to be published. And that's what the first run of books would be based on. That's where that term came from. Was there's always a first print run, and that first print run is based on what were the initial estimates based on those comps of and again, I'm just using the terminology of comps because in the assumption that it's a brand new author, right? Or somebody who's not very well known, that kind of thing. But it's basically the same process for someone who's published 20 books, right? They're going to look at that author's past history and say, okay, how did her last book do? Or how did his last book do? What were the numbers like? Where did it sell well? Where could it improve? are there things that we could do to help encourage sales, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then based on all that, they'll base the sales, they'll base the actual sales plan, right? And again, they'll base the manufacturing numbers. Now, in today's world, again, so this is back when you had to have uh, like page plates set up for a print run. It's back in the day when you couldn't have a book with more than, I think it was 110,000 words, because you literally could, there was no such printing press that could handle a book larger than that. Like literally, that's what used to dictate the size of
Interesting. I didn't
a
know
book.
that.
Yeah. It
Cool.
wasn't just that, oh my God, 1,000-page book, that's boring. No, that was not why. It was because they literally could not um, print a book bigger than, I think it was 110,000 words. So let's fast forward to today, or actually, let's just say even in the last 8 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing of books has gone digital. So there is no one's typesetting, no one's, there are no uh, uh, typeface pages. None of this exists. Well, not, I can't say none of it exists anymore. That is not the cost-effective way of printing a book.
Of course.
Again,
Right.
now, all right, of course, now it's all digital. And because it's all digital, you can now have books that have 150,000 words, and you can have books that once upon a time it used to take weeks to print, you know, 5,000 books. And now maybe it takes, I don't know, 48 hours,
Mm-hmm.
72 hours, something like that, right? So because the expediency of actually having the books printed, if you are using a digital model, is so much faster, it's so much more convenient. A couple things have happened in terms of how you're selecting books and how you're selecting what your print run's going to be. So one, sorry, because now it's not months in order to print a book. Yeah, and don't you love my cat? The second she's like, someone's getting attention other than me, it is time to sit on mommy's lap. Um, because now it's not like, you are tied to a huge printing press and there's a backlog of books to be printed that takes months and months and months to print potentially, right? Because you have to set up the typeface and so forth and so on. And then you actually do the print run, then you have to tear it down, and then you have to, back in place the next print run, so forth and so on.
Right.
Because that is not true, because there aren't all these uh, things that are causing, massive delays. What that actually means is now what publishers can do is they heavily encourage the sales team, and also the authors to do big pre-pub, campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, when you go online, like, you might see like a Michelle Obama is going out and doing like tons of, you know, uh, speaking engagements and online and in person and so on. And they already have her book available for pre-order, and they've had it available for pre-order for months, right?
Right.
Typically, you'll see a book available for pre-order starting minimally 6 months prior to the actual publication date, if not, more like 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what the publishing house is doing is they then sit down and say, oh, holy crap, there's already, 800,000 books on pre-order. Then our first run needs to be like double that, right? And
Right.
that's what dictates your the actual first run of, say, of actual titles, right? And because it's so much faster and so much easier now to actually do that print run, again, it's not the same. There's not the same level of stress around having going to your second print run or your third print run. It's just, oh, you know what? We need another 100,000, or now we have a back order of 50,000 books. All right, let's go ahead and order another 100,000. It'll be a couple of days, but if it's a couple of days, so what? It's a couple of days to get it printed, and then within a couple of days after that, so give it a week, it's in your hands. So because of that, that whole concept of a print run and the kinds of delays that individuals would experience, it's just not it just doesn't really exist in the same capacity. So
We've
I
got
hope
all
that.
that, excuse me, quantity and expediency with printing the books. But doesn't it lose some of the human touch, some of the the eyes, making sure that things are right, things are the way they should be within the book, so that they don't make any mistakes or miss anything in the books that are mistakes?
Oh, yeah, always. I mean, well, part of the manufacturing process is when you submit the digital files, they then send to you digital copies to
Mhm.
review, exactly for what you're describing, like looking for egregious errors, right? And then usually you then find, like stupid little typos and stuff like that.
Basically, the onus is on the writer.
Well, the onus is on the publisher, right? It's
Oh,
their,
mhm.
you know, now admittedly we do pull in the writers to ask them to look over it, and more so because in our experience, we've had a lot of writers that, well, I can't say a lot, but we've had a good number of writers who, once they saw their book in print, they went, "Ah, oh my God, I can't stand this sentence anymore." Well, you loved it last week, but okay. So to avoid that whole, because it's a much bigger back and forth, right? If they wait to have the panic attack until it's actually in paperback, right? Um, so to kind of avoid that, we give it to them when we get the e-print copy, and then ask them for any kind of changes. So because sometimes the revisions are something that it's it's something that the manufacturer needs to take care of, because maybe there's something weird with the spacing, or stuff like that. And
Right.
sometimes it's stuff that we need to go back to our uh, we have someone who does all the interior files, right? A
Mhm.
company that we use, and sometimes it's stuff that he needs to take care of. So yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Kind of prevents the author from going all I've got this serial to making edits all the way up to the printing process.
Yeah, I mean, it's so heavily dependent on the author and what the author wants to do. Again, we have some authors who are, you know, um, they're very thorough before it even gets to the point of being formatted, and
Right.
so by the time it even gets to an e version, um, it's a very easy process. And we have others who, uh, I honestly think they've been writing the book too damn long. And so, they're still in edit mode, right? So they want to come back with massive editorial changes, and it's like, no, 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 you
No, no.
know,
We accepted this one, not
right,
that one. Yeah.
right. And that's why, as part of our editing process, we make sure that, okay, the author understands this is a collaboration. And because it's a collaboration with your editor, what that means is, before you come back to us and say, okay, this is done, you guys have to agree that it's done. And when the editor and the author jointly agree that this story is absolutely complete, this is the final product, and then that's when we actually start the product management
Right.
process to get it into the actual manufacturer. So, yeah.
And most of the authors that I've worked with are fine with the finalized copy. I give them the finalized copy with no edits, no comments, no questions. Do you approve this? Because when you say yes, this is
Yeah.
going to the publisher. I've
Right.
had at least one writer say, "Oh, I've got more changes to make, and they're kind of extensive. Would you mind looking at it again?"
Mm.
And I'm like, "No, because we agreed that the third version or the fifth version was the one that we're sending to the printer. You
Right.
can't keep making changes every time you get the book. I mean, this is a winnowing process, not a building process
Right.
kind of thing, you know? So it gets frustrating when authors kind of don't understand the concept of the business side of it, how things work to get them on track and into a publishable format.
Right.
So I just I don't know. That was my two
And
cents.
we've had a couple of a couple of authors who, like, we went through the whole editorial process, and then they back out at the last minute. And I mean, that's fine. Understand that that's crazy unprofessional. And it's especially unprofessional. I've only seen one, to everyone else's credit, person come back and they self-published it. And because I really don't think, well, I'm positive that they understood what goes into getting a book into into readers' hands. Like, it's not, I really think with Amazon and, Amazon self-publishing,
Right.
they made it sound like, oh my gosh, you self-publish and boom, you suddenly have 1 million fans. This is amazing, right?
Right.
It's not that simple. It's not that easy.
And also, if they're backing out the last minute, we put all this effort into the editing of it, the formatting of it, making it as perfect as we can. So for them to take it and publish it on themselves or even bring it to a different press, I mean, that's beyond an insult. That's just completely unprofessional, like you were saying.
Yeah. And one or two have actually pulled out and then come back to us later and said, "Oh, I changed my mind." And I just don't respond, to be honest, because I don't know. Like, I'm not sure how to respond to that. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
yeah, they let you down once. You gonna trust them a second time?
right. And it's not, you know,
Right.
and I had one guy actually own, or girl, own that she did self-publish it and it didn't do anything, and she wanted to find out if we would take it back. And I just didn't reply because I don't know, because she was actually challenging throughout the entire process. So there's
Yeah.
no real impetus, like, you know, I think oftentimes too, or I know sometimes we've had authors, they accept their work and they're like, "Oh, this is proof that I'm the next Tom Clancy, or I'm the next, J.J. Abrams or whatever," right? And
Mhm.
so clearly I'm a genius, and so I can go off and do this on my own. And I mean, God bless you, man. If you can,
Yeah,
rock on. Like,
it's a
that's
tough
amazing.
industry. Yeah, it's a
It's a
tough
tough,
industry. If you can make it on your own, more power to you.
yeah. And I mean, like, I think that's awesome. You should try it. If you honestly think, like, maybe you are the next Brandon Sanderson. Like, holy crap, that's awesome. If you can do that, I'd love to be the next Brandon Sanderson. I mean, damn,
Right.
he sells in the millions. Like, that's amazing. That's incredible.
But then don't submit
Um,
it if you think it's perfect because you gotta go through the process of whatever press that you submit it to, who accepts it or that accepts it. And for
right,
some people, that just doesn't float with them. They just say, "Well, no, it's perfect. It won a contest, or well, it placed in a contest." Like,
right,
well, no, it still needs help. It still needs work. We can make it even better than it is. That's the
right,
thing that I don't understand. That I try to convey to my authors the most is that we're here to make this book better than it is. It was good enough to be accepted. So it's like AAA minor league baseball, but now let's go to the pros. Let's
right,
make it polished, make everything cool, make everything, put all the elements in there, make sure the images sing, make sure the plot moves along well, make sure the everything, the descriptions work well, and to make it better. I know I'm saying the
yeah.
same thing over and over again, but it's like I don't understand how people can balk at that. I really don't get it. That they would say,
Well,
"Well, it's good the way it is." Well,
and what's
no.
to your point about like the majors, what I find really fascinating about all this too, and I actually find this in my, day job career as well. The people who are like, huge award-winning, uh, super talented, sell in the millions, get a lot of attention, blah, 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 are some of the nicest, most grounded, kindest people you will ever meet. Now, that's not always true, but I want to say it's like 80% of the time it's true. And if you take that into perspective, then it helps you understand like even they sit, get feedback from their editors because they view it as a collaboration because that's what
Of
it
course.
is. Right.
Exactly.
So, and sometimes you're not going to have a good fit with an editor. And we've had that happen before.
Hmm.
I've had, uh, I've switched over editors for some of our authors in the past because I got it. Like I understood, no big deal. You know, our goal is to your point, we want to publish great stories and we
Hmm.
want to make sure those great stories get into fans' hands. We want to help change the world through stories because we're bringing out stories that, maybe you haven't seen anything like it before, you know? Maybe
Right.
it addresses something about our within our society that isn't being addressed elsewhere, you know?
Hmm.
And that's why we're here. So, you know, when someone comes to us and says, "Oh my gosh, I'd love you to publish my work," and then they're incredibly difficult and they're a pain in the ass throughout the process, and then their book doesn't sell well, and then they're like, "Well, I could be the next whatever," but you have to actually work as a part of this. This has to be a collaboration. This industry, I mean, every industry in reality is all relationship based, but
Hmm. Yep.
especially anything in the creative area, right?
Right.
Especially in content creation. It is so relationship based because you guys, everyone you work with, you don't have to all agree, but vibe in some way where you get what you're trying to accomplish. And therefore,
Hmm.
you're all working to a common goal. And it's not the same thing as, you know, working in like a, Campbell's soup plant.
Well, if you're going to come aboard and be difficult, then why didn't you just self-publish in the first place?
Right.
I mean, to use our services, to use our skill and our editors and our artists to your own selfish means, and then you've got this option in the back of your head that you're going to pull out. You have a 50% chance you're going to pull out anyways. It's
Right.
like what kind of that's just arrogance. It just doesn't make sense. Not very professional, as you said.
Right. And honestly, it really does, whether you realize it or not, it just sets it really shows poorly on you as the writer. And because believe me, all of not only do all presses talk, but all agents talk to all presses. Like that's how you actually get on in a press most of the time, right? Because most
Right.
presses, require an agent. We don't, but others, several others do. But I can tell you right now, like when I go to a conference, you know, I'd say there's a bit of time where a lot of the networking, it's not networking with authors, it's networking with agents and other publishers because sometimes another publisher may encounter a story that they think's pretty cool, but they
Right.
know it's not for them, so they'll pass it on to, a buddy and just say, "Hey, I just saw this. I wondered if you might, you know, find it interesting."
Exactly. Yeah. Just,
So and the reverse is true too. If you're a jackass and someone calls me and says, "Hey, this guy Eugene submitted something to us, and they mentioned that you published one of his short stories. What'd you think?" Oh my God, he was such a jackass. Like, I hate to say it, but we're gonna be honest. And
yeah. Why put them through the same thing we went through?
right. And I know authors go out there and say the same thing. They're like, "Oh, that press was a jackass. I'd never work with them again. And it's like, okay, you know,
Nature of the beast.
nature of the beast. Absolutely. So that was my big, I guess, soapbox. I have no idea. So Caroline says the best writing is relationship based. I 100% agree. I really do. Because I think that a lot of times, I mean, a really good author, and you only get this way through years and of just of writing. A really good
Hmm.
author can write a first draft and then go over and the second draft and be able to see blind spots, right? That's you only get to that point again through repetition and through studying other people's writing and studying other works. But really, what a lot of what a really good editor does is looks at it from with the eye of a reader and says, you know, if I was the person reading this for the first time, would I want to continue reading it? How can I help this get to the next level? Right? That's really what you're trying to do.
Exactly. That's how I approach my editing. Is what's going to take the reader out of the story, or what's going to make them question what's going on, what's going to interrupt the flow. Well, if you're going to interrupt the flow, I put a comment down. It's like, this takes the reader out of this to have to think about this, to put it in perspective, to go back in the story. So you've just lost them. Now,
Right.
have they lost the reader? No, they I caught the error. I caught the fact that they did this, and I want them to smooth it over so that it doesn't make it to the reader. But I still preface it with the reader would be pulled out of the story with this, because we're both going for the same goal.
Right. And understand that if we're giving you feedback, we're not giving you feedback because it's like, you know, I'm bored. I just want to make some crap up. And I'm just going to put this down, you know, or I've had a bad day, so F you. I'm going to give you feedback. Now, a good editor is going to give you feedback because when they're reading the story, there's something about it that's taking them out of the story, or there's something about it that does not make them want to continue reading. And a really good editor has analyzed enough work and has written enough themselves that they
Mm-hmm.
can look at the work and say, I know what it is. Here are my suggestions of how to make this, you know, how to make this work. So
Right. And what I tell my authors is that I'm going to make suggestions. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to, point things out. Now you're free to accept or ignore, disagree with all of them. It's up to you. It's your book. But if
right,
you disagree with one, tell me why you're disagreeing with it so I can understand where you're coming from
right.
an artistic point of view. Now, I've had some authors who ignore 85% of my suggestions and questions and whatnot. Just completely ignore them, just blow right by, no comments, no nothing, no say, well, this is why I didn't do this. But the prose that they deliver, after reading through the comments and after reading through what I've mentioned and going through their script one more time, I mean, the work that comes out is just amazing.
Hmm.
So they don't always have to listen to all your comments. They don't always have to answer your questions. The end product is what counts. And sometimes when the end product is as good as it is, I mean, you just sit back and go, well, okay, well, we did it together, me and him or me and her.
That's right. I mean, and to your point, you know, it's asking those leading questions that then force the author to think more and say, oh wow, I didn't see that. And to your point, they may not do exactly what it is that you're suggesting, but it enables them to look at the broader piece and then say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
how can I take this to the next level? Right now, I get it. Now I understand what my editor saw, and that revision can just be amazing, absolutely amazing.
I worked with one author that he ignored 80% of my questions. But well, my biggest question was, where are we? Put some place on this. I can't tell where we are. This is a table. I don't even know if it's a restaurant or dance hall or whatever. Where are we? Over and over and over again until
Mhm.
by page 120, 130, he nailed a paragraph. Just nailed it. It's like description, reaction to it, emotional reaction to it, more description, and how's the character look at this? How's the character look at that? I'm like, this is what I want you to do for the rest of the book. This is
Yeah.
what I want. And you know what? He did it. And the
Mhm.
book is just magnificent because of it.
Mhm.
Just because of that one paragraph. So it's like sometimes just like throw it all out.
Yeah. And yeah, to your point, sometimes it's thematic, right? Like the challenge that you keep finding, it's over and over and over. And oftentimes, what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll have a call. Like I'll
Mhm.
provide the leading questions, but I'll intentionally sit down and have a call and just kind of walk them through. Like, okay, I love your work, otherwise we wouldn't have accepted it, right?
Right.
Um, but this is what I'm finding, and this is what I think, how I think you can take it to the next level. So you're going to find a lot of questions, like leading questions throughout the work, and this is what the leading questions are intended to do. So, and again, you don't have to do exactly what I'm telling you, right? But be
Right.
aware that, this is why I'm giving the feedback that I'm giving. And I mean, when an author comes back and nails it, it's like, damn, you know, like I could have never expected anything as brilliant as what they came back with. So
And there's a good chance that they never would have gotten there without collaborating with another individual to make it better, to bring it to the pros, the big leagues.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And they're in the background going, "I helped with this," and that's all the credit you want. That's all the credit you really need.
yeah, exactly. Because
Mm-hmm.
our purpose is not to sit here and say, look how fabulous I am, because blah blah blah. Our purpose is to help, to take that story to a whole nother level, so
Mm-hmm.
that it's not just your mom who wants to read it, right? It's not just your cousin, but people seek it out, and they want to devour it, and you get letters and phone calls and emails just telling you just how this story changed their life. And that's my goal. you know
Mm-hmm.
I want every author to get a chance to experience that.
I
So,
agree.
um, so yeah. All right. So, wow, we only have like 13 minutes left. That's kind of crazy.
Oh wow, interesting.
So, I before you joined, I let everyone know that we had gone through all the submissions, and our next review session isn't until March. Um, and I also let them know that this year we're doing, or this round we did a little bit differently, in that we're if it's a story that we liked, but it could use a good another round, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It most likely is going to get declined, but we're going to give them feedback and give them an open door to go ahead and resubmit to us when they're done that revision, if they choose to do it.
Well, simple act of feedback on their work, I mean, is incredible. They should take that with just it's gold.
Yeah.
So yeah, the session was really interesting yesterday with everybody chiming in from the different aspects of how they saw the works and how they saw the different stories. But what was neat was how we all kind of coalesced with every story. Well, we came to a point where the majority said yes, and finally everybody said yes, or everybody said maybe, or everybody said no, 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 we're not going to try this one. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like we came with a collective whole, like a collaborative whole, whereas we were all working as a relationship. I think it's a great process.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, so everyone who's watching, what we do is, we have our core leadership team, we have our core acquisition editors, and then I somehow got in this mix, and we all are assigned all of the submissions from that previous period to go through. And before we actually go through a submission review meeting, we all are we all have to come to the table with our opinion of, do we want it? Is this a maybe? Do we not want it? And then the why, right?
Why? Right.
Why do you want this story? Why do you think the story's a maybe? Why is it a no? Right? Whatever the
Mm-hmm.
case may be. And there is no wrong or right answer, right?
Right.
It's each of us has our own distinct opinion, and it's obviously going to be based on our own experiences and the stories that we've all individually read, that kind of thing.
I have a
And
question for you. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Um, how often have you read the first couple pages of a book and gone, "Oh, I can't even see us publishing it," and then read another 10 or 15 or 20 pages and changed your mind? Does that make sense?
Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
You didn't like the first couple of pages, but you kept reading and it changed your mind. You started to like it.
Oh,
Does that happen to you often, or is that kind of a rare occurrence?
uh, what I usually find is that if the writer's a good writer, um, the the first, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 pages, it's almost like they're clearing their throat,
Mm-hmm.
and then the real story starts on like page 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever. Um, it's weird. It's kind of like how we experienced last night, where it's like suddenly there are a ton of stories from people out of Chicago, or suddenly there are a bunch of stories based in the 1920s.
Right.
It happens in waves. Sometimes we'll get a bunch like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, depending on how much they've won me over in that initial, like, let's say 50 pages, I may go to bat for it, right? I might say, hey, if this, as long as the author agrees to revision, including that we actually have it start on page whatever it is, 30, 40, whatever,
Right.
then I'd advocate us actually purchasing it. Otherwise, the answer is no, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was curious. Something I was thinking about while I was
No, no,
going
no.
through the different stories.
It's a great question. Um, Caroline asks, so I have a novel that I submitted and it's still in progress. I was under the impression the next period would be December. So Caroline, we actually did go over your story. I will not say what our decision was here. We will be sending out the decisions. I'm probably going to be sending them out by the end of day Sunday. If it's for everyone who's watching, if you did send us a work for our review prior to, I want to say, October 24th, then we did review it last night. And if it's something that we made a final decision on, or it was something that we said, we really do like it, but we want to make sure the author's open to being edited, then you will hear from me in the next, again, probably by end of day Sunday. If it is a work that we were we weren't quite sure yet, we wanted to kind of look at it a little bit more in depth, then you may not hear from us by end of day Sunday. But I'll be honest, there weren't that many like that. So yeah, Caroline, you should hear from us by end of day Sunday. So cool. Um, so actually, Peter, how often do you encounter a story that you're like, oh my gosh, we have to get this one, other than Curtis?
um, well, it sometimes it happens within the first 5 pages. It just something
Mm,
just grabs me. And what I tell people that I mentor, anybody that I'm talking about this with, if it gets me past page 10, that's a good story. If it gets me past
mm,
page 30, I've forgotten what I was doing before. I've gone another 20 pages. That's good writing. That's something I want to work with.
mhm,
Does that happen often? I mean, right out of the box? Not very often, no. I'd say maybe 10%, maybe 5% of the time, just because, I mean, what is polished isn't always gold kind of thing, you know?
yeah,
And what, so yeah, stick with that.
no,
I
that makes
just think,
sense.
yeah, it's rare because, I mean, well, and there's also the other side of the coin is like somebody has polished something so well, it's fantastic, and then they're completely resistant to any sort of editing or change or any sort of
Mm,
suggestions.
mhm,
And then you run into brick wall after brick wall. But every once in a while, I like the story I was telling you about the other day. I jumped on that. You told me to check it out. I checked it out. I'm like, this
yeah,
is what I want, and it's just
yep,
like there's no question in my mind. And like I said, 5% of the time that works.
yeah. No, that's fair.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just feel like I feel like the author and the editor both have to have some amount of buy-in for it to really work, like the buy-in to the story,
Hmm.
and they have to agree on what that means, right? Because the editor may have a completely different vision than what the author intended.
Right.
Which is why we have the process we do in terms of acquiring or bringing on editors as well, right?
Hmm. Right.
Because we don't want anybody who comes in and dictates to the author, well, you have to do blah blah blah. Like, it's just not. They have to be willing. They have to be open minded and willing to listen to the author and what that author's vision is.
Yeah. The
And then
goal of an editor is not to impose;
correct,
it's to extrapolate.
exactly, and sometimes the author doesn't realize that what they think they're accomplishing that they aren't, right?
Hmm.
And the editor's job is to point out, like, okay, I know that you think this is a thriller, mystery, horror, but um as I'm reading this is really coming off as a magical realism. So, do we want to revise this so that it's coming across more in this capacity? Or, do you want us to amp up the elements that are making it, really sing in this space? Because I really think it sings over here, you know.
Right. Hmm.
And sometimes the author will come back and say, oh wow, no, I just made that crap up because I didn't know what it was, and sometimes the author's gonna come back and say, no, 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 my vision is this. So, and then you kind of you work with them, you figure it out,
Hmm.
so
If you can establish that level of trust at the beginning, it goes a long way for the process.
oh yeah, I agree,
Mhm.
absolutely, 100%. So
Yep.
all right guys, you have 3 minutes for you that you can ask myself and Peter whatever you want. um and actually, I think we won't, just as a heads up guys, we won't be here on Thanksgiving, just because that is a Thursday. I will be stuffing my face personally. I've been daydreaming about stuffing actually. um, but we will be there, or we should be there, bar any illnesses or anything like that, the week prior and the week subsequent. So, and again, love your questions. Reach out. Um, yeah. Oh, the other really interesting thing is every once in a while we get an author who will say, I will not go with you unless you do whatever. And if it's something that I know we just simply can't support, you
Hmm.
know, I just say, okay, bye. And, no worries. Because I think you should be with whatever publisher will make you'll be most comfortable with. But I also think you need to be realistic.
Well, you've also had authors that talked themselves or bullied themselves out of contract.
Oh,
They
yeah.
wanted so much, you pulled the contract. It's like, this is not worth it for our press to publish this because we haven't even begun the process yet, and you're doing this. Or I want
Right.
this, and I want 80% royalties, and I want this. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's work together. Let's see what we can work out. See what we can make work. But
Right.
some people just they get pushy. They think that they've got the next great Gatsby, and they don't. They push themselves out of contract. It makes me wonder
Right.
how many other contracts they push themselves out of.
And by the way, The Great Gatsby was actually a bestseller when it was first published, just as a
I
FYI.
know. That's why I think they think their work is the next great Gatsby.
Mhm. Oh,
So.
yeah. Well, and it's funny too, like, I think a lot of authors have a misconception of what a bestseller is. So, a bestseller for USA Today or New York Times, it's about 5,000 books need to be sold. And that may sound like not that big of a deal because we've got billions of people on the planet. But it is a big deal. It's not that easy. That's why it is a bestseller list. So
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, it's around 5,000, something like that. Although the New York Times has all these other, like, it's not as clean cut as 5,000. USA Today's list it's literally, the number of book sales.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times has some other little magical
Stipulations.
formula. Yeah, yeah, that they don't tell anybody. So anyway. All right. Well, with that, it is 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you have a fantabulous week, and we
Mm,
will see you next week. So have a
great.
good one, guys.
See you guys. Thank you.